Covenant House New York. For more than 45 years, the organization, a nonprofit, has provided residential services to vulnerable homeless, runaway, and exploited youths. As the largest provider of runaway and homeless youth services in New York City, Covenant House New York serves over 1,900 young adults between the ages of 16 and 24 each year. And my guest is Sister Nancy Dowling, the Executive Director of Covenant House New York. Welcome to WBAI.
Thanks so much for taking time to talk with me today.
So I did not give a description of the range of your services because I'd love to give you an opportunity to tell our listeners a little about what Covenant House does.
Sure. So in addition to being able to provide shelter to young people who have experienced the trauma of homelessness, we also provide transitional housing to them where they can stay for up to 2 years. And then we also provide permanent supportive housing. And then beyond the residential services that we provide, we also have a federally qualified health center where young people who can come in and get physical, medical health attended to. We also have very strong mental health programs with the psychologists and licensed social workers on hand to deal with some of the trauma that our young people have faced. We have education and employment services that we offer them, legal services, youth development services, and just a whole range of things that we try to provide, arts and music, because there are so many talented young people who come to us.
I've been talking about how there's surging unemployment and housing instability. Given the pandemic, what do you envision is going to happen?
Well, what we saw during the last economic downturn back in 2008 was a large increase in the number of youth who are experiencing homelessness. For many reasons, in part because they lose their jobs, in part because their family members lose employment, so poverty is a driving force, in part because the added stress of these types of situations create more domestic violence in the families, and so they get kicked out of the home with the added stress. And so we expect to see over these next year or so an increase in the number of youth that are needing our services.
And I'm glad you mentioned that about domestic violence. The Queens District Attorney had mentioned that as well earlier in the show. Talk a little about what Covenant House is going to be doing in the coming months. I would like to say years, but I'm hoping the pandemic ends soon. But in the coming months to address the increased need.
So, we've in addition to the increased need, we've also had to look at, how are we going to handle young people who become, COVID positive. So we've had to convert some of our offices into wellness spaces. We've had to move some of our offices to create more space for our young people in the residential setting. So we're trying to make sure that they are at least 6 feet apart, even when they're in sleeping quarters. So we don't want them right on top of each other. So those are some of the things that we've had to address. In addition to which, as always when these things happen, we have to figure out how we do more with less. How do we serve more youth? How do we get the youth off the street and into safe places? So we've expanded things like our transitional living programs, our permanent supportive housing programs, so we can get young people who come into shelter, through shelter and into more long-term stable housing situations. And I anticipate that that's what we will continue to do over the next year or two, and certainly over the next month. But we have to first make sure that we can serve them safely and make sure that we're attending to all of their needs.
And one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of nonprofits have had to also adapt to a virtual world, take programs that were done externally, that were done in parks and plazas and in gala halls, and turn them into virtual events. You recently held your annual signature event, Sleepout America. How was it different this year, and what was the response?
Well, this year we had to do it virtually, so we did it online. We had a great response. We had over 400 people across the United States who participated in Sleepout America. They slept out in their backyards, on their living room floors, in their garages, and they joined us virtually online through WebEx, and we were very excited to be able to. It's not only a fundraiser where we try to raise funds to support the work that we're doing with our young people, but it's also raising awareness that there is youth homelessness in the United States, far more than people know, and what that means for our young people. What are some of the traumas that our young people have experienced? So folks from across the United States got to hear from some of our young people, got to hear from our staff about the programs that we offer, the stories of our youth, and got get to understand what youth homelessness really looks like in the United States.
And when it comes to raising awareness, you also have another event. That's why I wanted to make sure I had you on the show. You have another event coming up next week. Can you talk a little about what's going to take place?
Yeah, normally on Monday, May 18th, we would be having our Night of Broadway Stars here in New York City and in other locations across the United States. But this year we can't do it live, so we are going to be doing it virtually for the first time. We're very excited about it. We have a number of celebrities who will be joining us for this virtual concert entertainment and getting to know, again, about youth homelessness. So it's, again, to enlighten people as to what's going on. But we have a number of stars who will be joining us. Audra McDonald, John Dickerson will be hosting it for us. Stephen Colbert will be on, Meryl Streep, Martin Short, Morgan Freeman, and a whole host of other people as well. We're very excited and very grateful for the support that we've gotten.
What would you say, and I'm glad you said that about raising awareness, what would you say is the main message that you want the public to take away from an event like that? What message would that be?
Well, I think it's that these young people are not they're not different than the rest of our young people in the sense that they have hopes and dreams. They are very talented, very gifted young people. So homelessness is, as our president Kevin Ryan often says, is the least interesting thing about our young people. These are funny, intelligent, talented young people, and we want people to understand that that's what our young people are. That homelessness is not who they are; it's what's happened to them. And that I think if there's a message of hope in it as well, is that when our young people have stable, safe place, loving and caring adults in their lives, it makes such a difference. They can tap into all of that giftedness and use those talents for good. And that's what Covenant House is really about, helping these young people to tap into all of that giftedness.
And as my listeners know, I've talked a lot about how nonprofits are suffering right now, given the challenges they're facing by not being able to connect directly with people in person or because of funding challenges. As you look ahead, how do you feel this pandemic is going to reshape the nonprofit sector, and in particular for those organizations like yours that focus on issues such as homelessness?
Well, I do think for those of us who focus on homelessness, there'll be much more of a need, unfortunately, for the services that we offer in the coming years. In addition to which, I think this pandemic is reshaping how we communicate with other people, more online, but more face-to-face online, if you will, perhaps less in person in some instances where, from a health standpoint, that's what we need to do. From a fundraising standpoint, I think we have to get more creative in terms of connecting with folks online. We're not always going to be able to do that in person. So I think it's going to reshape a number of aspects of the way that we do our work.
And how can people learn more about Covenant House and also be able to watch the concert next week?
So to learn more about Covenant House and to watch the concert next week, the Night of Covenant House Stars, they can go to covenanthouse.org. And they can find out all about the work that we're doing, about the young people that we're serving, and they can get the information on how to join us for Night of Covenant House Stars on Monday, May 18th, starting at, I believe, 6 o'clock. I've forgotten the starting time. It may be later than that, but if they go to covenanthouse.org, they'll get all the information they need on that.
Sister Nancy Downing of Covenant House, thank you so much for joining me here on WBAI today.
Thank you for having me. Take care now.